Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eddie Marcus, spokesman and advocate of basic human rights for all people. That generally means that I'm more concerned about you as an individual, all of you, having an opportunity to experience the best that life has to offer. And my motto is, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, truth is, I have been, and I haven't told many people this, but I'll tell you. I was charged by God Almighty at the young, wonderful age of 26, and I accepted it in 28, at the age of 28, to come and tell the American people about freedom from release in this hell that we live in. Now, I wasn't given this title by an agency, a government agency, or a nonprofit, or private enterprise. This is a title that I chose for myself. Having gone throughout this country, concerned about basic human rights for all people, I found that there was not a government agency anywhere that was concerned about basic human rights for all people. There was not one of the nonprofits that were concerned about freedom and liberation for all people. Nor, as far as I could gather, there was anybody in the private arena. And because I had been given this mission of liberation for the people of this country, I felt it a statement to say basic human rights for all people. And that's my basic job and concern. Today, I want you to sit down and let's take a little bit of time. Usually, when I speak to you, I talk real fast and like I got a lot to say and only a few minutes to say it in. And I want to get it all in. And sometimes it might come out a little jammed, so clustered you might wonder what I've said. But today, tonight, I want to take a little bit of time and slow it down. I want to make sure that you get a chance to hear every word and that you get every meaning. Tonight, I'm going to speak to you on the subject matter, come back home. You have heard it said, ladies and gentlemen, that America is the greatest country on the face of the earth. And if you ask anybody in America, they would agree. I don't know if all of them know that for a fact or just because they've heard it so much till they would rather say it is without knowledge than to say it isn't. I'm sure there are other countries that would say they are the greatest. But when you start talking about the one who is able to wield power and cause people to do what they want them to do, then you would say undoubtedly the United States of America. Now, most people think to say that you're the greatest nation on earth is something to be applauded. But if you study history, there have been many nations with that title, the greatest nation. And what it takes for any nation to be the greatest nation, it takes for all nations to be the greatest nation. Now, having had greater nations prior to that title for America, all of those nations failed. Every last one of them failed. They failed for the same reason. The same reason that the United States of America will fall. Now, first of all, how does a nation become great? Most people have said that God Almighty blesses a nation and that nation becomes great. But as they get away from the blessings of God, then they begin to fall. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that? How does a man become rich? In America, we know. How does a nation become rich? Think about how a man becomes rich. How are billionaires produced? there's a character about them. Well, many of you got all kinds of thoughts now, but I'll tell you, a nation becomes great because it uses the resources of a nation exploitatively. In other words, a nation that is great usually has taken not only from the people of that nation, not only from the resources of that nation for a particular advantage, but people of other nations, resources of other nations. They have lied, they have cheated, they have stolen, they have threatened, and they have killed. That's how every nation becomes great. It has gone over and you call them bullies. They go and take something that doesn't belong to them, and they put it in their safe, put it in their vault, put it in their national product. That's how a nation becomes great. But a nation usually falls because of a couple of reasons. One is those nations that have been abused are not satisfied with this, and they plan to strategize themselves with other nations that have been abused, and they want to come back and get you, get even with you. Sometimes it takes many years to do that, to accomplish that. But nevertheless, it happens. But it doesn't happen on its own. Truth of the matter is, there's a power behind every nation. Some power behind the curtains, unseen power that moves and shifts and directs and infiltrates and causes people within a nation to act a certain way. And that is the real force behind a nation moving up as a great nation. And when that power behind the curtain has done about as much as it can and has achieved as much as it wants to from any particular nation, greatest nation, then they choose another nation to make great. And in so doing, then the nation that was held up as the great nation becomes a nation that is exploited. Similar to what happened to the Shah of Iran, or to any dictator that's been propped up and used by a great nation, who periodically there's time for you to shift your concern, shift your interest, and as you shift your interest, you leave that dictator out to wash. That's the same thing that happens to a great nation. It is left out to wash by the power behind the curtain. But I want you to get a sense that America, that you think is such a wonderful nation, is a wonderful nation to those who have profited from it as the nation has profited. But to those who have been used and abused by this nation, this is not a great nation. In fact, those people who have been abused by this nation will think that this is hell on earth, the worst nation in the world. Well, having said that, I wanted to refer to a couple of gentlemen who have left their mark in history that will help us to understand this mission about coming home. Let me go back to one I think that we would all have some type of understanding or knowledge of. Let's go back to Jesus. Now, many of you don't think Jesus was a real figure, that he was mythology. But nevertheless, the message is out there. So I want you to focus on the message and not the reality of whether Jesus was real or not. Jesus supposedly was a good person, a fair person, a just person who cared about the people and came to this planet, more specifically his place of birth, to teach the people the way to come back home, the way to live. To make a long story short, the powers that be, the state, the church, didn't like that. So they got together, conspired, and they took Jesus out. Now, since that time, we have called Jesus God. We have done all kinds of things, but I'm not going to get into those little technicalities. There's another man that we might know of, Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was a good man. I don't know if it was always good, but after he found out that he was to be, because of his race and his color, he was to be treated like trash, he went deep down inside of him and found a part of him that he didn't know he had, but he caused it to come forth. And Gandhi set out to do the right thing, to put things in proper perspective, to stand up for what was equal and just. What happened? His people conspired with the government, and they took him out, just as they did Jesus. Come back home. Now, let's go to another figure that we all know about. There have been many figures, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just boiling it down to 3 or 4 because we don't have the luxury of having you sit down forever to listen to these stories about so many people. But there was another called Malcolm X, a ruthless figure who made a change in his life, became a good man, wanted good things. Well, his people, the organization that he represented, because they were as they are, and the government, the state as it is, they conspired. And they took that man out. There was another man, go way back, white man. We've talked about an Indian and some black people. There was a white man once, a long time ago, a preacher, who was so upset at the way that this nation treated blacks that he decided to take it upon himself, the responsibility to liberate blacks, to arm them, to give them the wherewithal to fight against the oppression that was being imposed upon them. One of the greatest, people don't know it, friends of the black man that ever lived, John Brown. I thought I'd better get that in. And to jump forward again, there was another man named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The man said he had been to the mountaintop. He feared no man. He knew that blacks as a people would get to the promised land. He knew that he wouldn't get there with them because he had gone to the mountaintop. To go to the mountaintop, what do you think that means? Well, we won't worry about what you think it means. Let me tell you what it means. Going to the mountaintop means that you have learned life. You know what life is about. You know the author of life. And you know all of that which tries to destroy and deny life. But you also know that in order to receive life and keep life, you must never be fearful of that enemy that will come and get you, that came and got Jesus, that came and got Gandhi, that came and got Malcolm X, that came and got John Brown. You must never be fearful of it. Because if you're fearful of it, then you will be controlled by it, and the true God of life is not with you any longer. So what I'm actually saying is that to have gone to the mountaintop, to have received that truth, such a one embraces life beyond death. And that gives them the courage to stand and go back home. That was Dr. King. His people conspired with the government, and they sent him back home. Now, if I just took what I have said so far and try to sum it up and see if we can understand a purpose in the process, it would come out something like this. You have heard biblical stories that angels in heaven. Now, heaven is a place that we all say we want to go because we've heard such wonderful things about heaven. And nobody really tells you that there was trouble up in heaven. They will tell you that trouble occurred, but it was like something that happened a moment in time. But if you can use your brain and understand, if it happened at that moment, it didn't just occur at a single moment like a big bang. It was a process. And that story implies that there was an angel of light, Lucifer, who was not satisfied with heaven because he did not have the opportunity to exercise the power. Everybody's power hungry. And so he went about heaven trying to influence the angels about a different life. And according to the records, he got about a third of them. But we also understand, according to that record, that the powers of heaven kicked Lucifer out, along with a third of the heavenly host. So that tells us that even though we might get a chance, some of us, to get into heaven, we still got to be ready. We still got to be fit to stay there, because at any moment in time we can lose it. And one of the greatest ways to prepare yourself to be able to live in heaven or heavenly anywhere is to make sure that where you're at presently, that you practice the principles of living heavenly. In other words, if you're living in the United States of America and you think you're going to heaven, you better start trying to create heaven right here, because thereby you learn the principles of heaven. You learn what is required to fight off anyone that will come and try to dissuade you, persuade you, get you off track, take you out of your heavenliness. But most people don't understand that. So what I want you to understand is that if you plan on going to heaven, hopefully you plan to stay there. Because the door of heaven is just not open to any and everyone. It is open to those who choose to be there. Now, nobody's just reaching up, grabbing you, bringing you to heaven because they love you. They love you if you love heaven. And how do you love heaven? By choosing heaven. Now, let me see if I can bring this up a little bit closer so you can understand a little clearer what's going on here. I have said that I was chosen to come out and tell the world, starting wherever I am, having an effect, spread throughout the city, the state, the nation, and across the globe, about coming back home. Doesn't necessarily mean going in a place, but coming back to truth, coming back to life, freedom, liberation. And most folks don't have any idea what that means. But let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to think for a minute. Who made everything? I mean, everything that our senses can identify, anything that, where did that come from? It came from a power source that we cannot see. We recognize the work of it, but we can't see that power. We kind of say it's God. We shape God in our own image. Well, in our own shortcomings. But that's not God. God has no shortcomings. And if he does, and I say he because we've been led to believe that God is a he shaped like us. I don't know what God is. But anyway, God does what God wants. And all of the resources above the earth, all of them, clouds, air, galaxies, stars, sun, moon, video waves and audio waves and other waves that we common people don't know anything about, was made by that unseen power. The earth and everything that's on it, all, you and I included, exist by the making of that power. All the resources in the earth, minerals, everything, is made by that power. So no human being can claim ownership to anything. Why? Because we didn't make it. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to that power. And that power made it as such so that none of us could claim ownership to anything. And yet it is put there to be shared amongst all of us for the purposes that we determine are essential for the experiencing of the life as we understand it. It was put there for that purpose. No man with a big hand, with a gun, can go and claim anything. You know, the Indians living on the land, the natives living on the land, you can't go and whip them side the head, arrest them, kill them and call them savages, and then possess the land and call it yours. It's not your land. It still belongs to God for all the people who are in that vicinity to share of its benefit. Now, that God that made all of the things that we can see and can't see, that made us, put within our brains, in our heart, a desire to accomplish something, to do something. Not just to be walking around here on the earth, standing there like a tree. A tree has a purpose for being. A tree is not just a tree, something standing out there to be out there. A tree has all kind of purposes, and I don't have time to tell you what they are, but you know what they are. Feed the oxygen, shade, material to build from, and so many others. Paper, everything. So everything got a purpose. You got a purpose. And the master who put us together and made us and put all these purposes within us did so that once we come together, we complete something like a puzzle. And that puzzle becomes complete when we allow ourselves to express the will of the power that put all this stuff together. And what we do, we, by virtue of having all these gifts in our individual lives, we create all of the goods and services that we the people say are important to us. We do it. We were blessed with that authority to build houses, to build factories, to build cars, to make food, to make clothes, to make highways and byways, to shape reservoirs and lakes and rivers and everything. We were given that responsibility. We were given gifts to do that. We were given gifts to teach as we learn. We were given gifts to be medical professionals, to help prevent sickness and to treat sickness when it occurs and to make sure it does not reoccur. We were given those gifts by the power that put us here. Nobody can claim that on their own, even though we do. But that was put here so that everybody on earth could go to the reservoir and take from it whatever goods they desire, whatever services they desire, without being threatened or put down because they themselves were instrumental in putting it there. And in so doing it like that, you would have peace amongst you. You would be prosperous and you would have joy. These are the things that were intended from the beginning. This is the message that the Almighty has told me, put in my heart to tell you. Now you say, why me? Well, do you know the purpose of the church? The purpose of the church, my friends, for those of you who are young and didn't get a chance to live when the church was way back there, because the church used to have responsibility and kept it. Nowadays, there's a different story. But the purpose of the church is to keep people on the right track. People are selfish. People come down with that mentality that Lucifer had, that those third heavenly hosts had. They want to be powerful, manipulate and control people. It is the church's responsibility to remind people who owns everything. It is the church's responsibility to let people know that there's a way that brings life and there's a way that brings death. They're supposed to advocate life and walk according to the principles of life and stand against whatever would take life away. That's the church responsibility. That doesn't happen today because the church now is under the thumb of the state. They're partners with the state. And they are nothing but a group of what? Now that doesn't, there are people in the church, leadership, who are lovers, good, very wonderful people, but they're still under the authority of the church because they do what the church says do. And they try to, they know it. Many of them know it. They try to find a good way to act and they want to act good, but they have to follow the law because they exist under the law. On the charter, on the tax exemption and stuff like this, they have to obey the law. And many of them are satisfied that you would come and sit in their congregation and listen to them, make them feel proud. They might ask you to do some things and you do it. You put money in the church, you come back Sunday after Sunday, and sometimes you pick up your phone and call them and make appointments to go sit down and talk to them, make them feel real good. But the world that you're living in is the same. But I have given you an example of what the world should be like. I've given you an example and told you in a brief way what my mission in this is. Now, ladies and gentlemen, haven't told you that. That's the first part. The second part is the challenging part. This information has caused men like those I mentioned earlier, John Brown, King, Jesus, Malcolm X, and others, their lives. And it will cost me my life if anybody listens, if anybody pays any attention to it and start following it. It will cost me my life. And I'm hoping you listen. I'm hoping you wake up. I'm hoping you choose to go back home. And I gladly die. No, I didn't want to die so soon like the other men. I want to live a long life too. But I guess I have to live it on the other side if there is another side. And I'm not going to try to say I'm believing that there's another side. I just hope there's another side. I don't care if there isn't another side. What I'm saying is that I'm fed up with this hellish stuff that's going on. And so I'm going to tell you a truth that you probably have never heard before. And that truth begins with this. There's another God that runs this world. And that God is M-O-N-E-Y. You see, let me show you how those gods associate with the true God that made everything and allowed you to be able to create and take from. All your desires will be met. But this fake God come up with something called M-O-N-E-Y, in God we trust. Put your focus off the unseen God and put it on the seen God. And that God says, with however much you got of this, of me here, you can do anything. You can go anywhere. You can achieve any end. You have all kinds of power with this in God we trust. And so men want it because they want to live a prosperous life. They want to live a joyous life. And so that means they want to be able to do what they want to do. And in order to do that, since they have no focus on the unseen God, they got to get this God. And so men become liars and cheaters and thieves and robbers and terrorists and murderers to get this dollar, this God. You have, in the process of that, you have situations where you undereducate your civilization because you've stolen the money from the process. You have restricted and limited health care because the money, the God, has been stolen to go in other people's pocket to do what they want to and not serve the masses of the people. You have jobs and careers being denied because the money that would allow that to happen under this new God system has been stolen and taken back to create billionaires, multimillionaires, and so on and so forth. That's the operation of that God. Now, what people fail to understand is that while money is the God that everybody wants to get their hands on, there is a power behind the scene. Now, that power is the one that influenced the people to take their eyes off the unseen God and put their eyes on the in God we trust. That power behind the scene is the one who made the money. After getting you interested in it, made it, put it before you. Controls it, manipulates it, how much you can get and how you get it, go into credit, pay interest, borrow, use. They don't need the money. It's nothing to them. It's nothing but paper. But you need it because you are bound by it. You are captive to it. And what they are doing is really manipulating you. They tell you what to do. They tell you what is important in life because they either allow your dreams to come true or they deny them. Or they create for themselves dreams and fit people in that can handle and support their dreams. Then you have entertainers who sell their soul to just get that dollar. And they say they're supposed to get that dollar because the power behind the scene wants to get the people from thinking and want to mess with their minds in such a way and manipulate and be manipulated in such a way that they are just pawns. I say that about entertainers, but they're not the only ones. You got people who call themselves middle class reaching out at those dollars so much, and they are middle class because they haven't been elevated to that higher level yet. They're in the waiting zone. But in today's economy, they are getting pushed a little further down because the power behind the scene is getting ready to shift its focus from the United States of America to another nation, maybe China or some other place, and bring America down. And so we are here watching this stuff happen. Now, people are not ignorant. They might not know anything about the unseen God, but they know what's going on. That's why you have the mafia. The mafia say we're going to look out after ourselves. We know there's a con game going on. We know there's a Ponzi scheme, a Madoff thing going on by the government. So they decide that they're going to do what they have to do. They're going to do the same thing that the system does. They're going to follow the system's rule to protect themselves. So when you walk around saying you're upset with the mafia, don't be upset with the mafia. The mafia is just doing what the system does, trying to survive within a system. That's not and should not be your focus of condemnation. When you see gangbangers, they're doing the same thing. When you see rappers selling out the human population, saying all these negative things about them because they've experienced these things in their lives, and these are things that before could never be put on radio or CD or tape or anything. You can say it in your mouth up and down the street, but you wouldn't put it out there broadcasting it. But the power behind the scene wants to control the minds of the children. They don't want them thinking, of the young people. They don't want them to have ideas that are positive. In other words, they want to influence what people think. Be stupid. Be ignorant. Follow these guys who are saying all these ignorant things to you. Be like them. Aspire to have pockets full of in God we trust like they got. Inspired to have big fancy homes and cars and things like they have. Now, ain't nothing wrong with that. God, the unseen God, made provision for that to happen. But now, since you've been tricked, you got to sell your soul in order to get this. So understand, we talk about prostitutes. We talk about gamblers. These are people who are trying to get back a piece of that pie that they've been missed. Now, we have laws that condemn people who come back and attack the system because the system doesn't play that. They put you in jail, they put you in prison, and they run for president when they do it. You see, this is what we talk about when we talk about coming back home. I have some notes here. You know, it would be no good for me to sit here and tell you this information if I wasn't able to give you a way out. You see, there is a way out for those who want a way out. You know, one thing about the unseen God, it doesn't force you to look for a way out. The principle basically is that you shall reap what you sow. You plant a seed and you're going to get that fruit. And by doing that, it perhaps can drive you to a point where you want to change your way. I mean, some people smoke knowing their heart have cancer. A lot of times they don't want to stop smoking until they get the cancer. It might be a little late. But at the same time, it could be used as a source of motivation for those who are thinking about smoking, or those who are smoking and been thinking about quitting, and now they perhaps got a reason to quit because of what. But now that's the unseen God. The seen God, the man behind the curtain, forces you because it threatens your life, and because you do not have the connection, you don't have the hookup, you don't know the truth, you just follow suit, and so We have what I have shared with you as what was intended, what was planned, and we have what reality is. Now, how do you get from this? Well, if you want to just try systematically to do it, you would have to create social and economic justice. That has got to exist. No other way can it happen without social and economic justice. Now you think about, can you do that? Also, there can be no violence. So all this thinking about war and competition that brings out that spirit of war, that will change. It will change when the people decide that they don't want to play the game anymore. Now, usually when something like this happens, the power to bring about change, real change, happens from the bottom up, from those people who have been victims by the system the most. Usually anybody who's got a little bit of "in God we trust," they trust it. It might not be but $1.50, but they trust it. And the man who shouldn't trust it is a person who doesn't have any of it. They can't count on that God. They got a hope that there is an unseen God and rely on that unseen God. And if they hope and start turning to that and trusting in that unseen God, they will be empowered. They will be empowered to resist. They will be empowered to resist the state, to resist the status quo. They'd have to force people to act right. Force them to act right. That might mean for people who are losing their bargaining power, people who have been hooked up with somebody who had unions and they don't have these anymore. They're really not necessary, but in this kind of environment, they have been used very well. The collective bargaining is a wonderful thing in the society, but it's not the best thing. It helps out the middle class. It doesn't do anything for the poor. So the poor, they might have to, if need be, stop sending their kids to school and require that the teachers stop going to teach. Require that other people who go to jobs every day don't go. Now you say, why should these people not go to their jobs? Why shouldn't they keep on trying to do stuff to make their lives productive? Well, see, the people at the bottom, it is their responsibility to try to enlighten these folks about who got something, about what's going on, and try to get their support. Got to get them to wish them well, but not only wish, but to support it in their activities. Now, as I have said earlier, that's not going to happen. So you're going to have to force. You're going to have to be willing to bring down the system. You're going to have to be willing to stop the ability to go backwards and forth to your jobs every day. You're going to have to get in the streets, shut this nation down where people can't go to work, to get them to focus on your concern. When time comes to vote, you, not only you, but you must be encouraged, and you must encourage others to vote for people who care about all people. And the politicians that we have in our various positions today at the city, state, and federal and county level, they don't work for the people, they work for special interests. And thinking that you can get them to support you just by raising a sign up saying, tax the rich, or we not fed, I'm not going to take it anymore, that's a joke. You got to force these people, you got to take them out of office. Vote their tails out of office. Just vote them out of office. Make sure they don't get back in there. And if a slick one get in, get him out. A recall, get him out. If it's not good enough just to try to get somebody to say, well, they represent the poor. No, if you get somebody coming in there saying they represent the poor, they are no better than one that goes in there and say they represent the rich. Well, they don't actually say they represent the rich, but you can tell by their actions that they represent the rich. So you cannot send a person or individual in there talking about they represent the poor. You must represent everybody. Be fair, be just. Otherwise, You just a rotten apple waiting to stink. You gotta, and ladies and gentlemen, when you shut these forces down, when you stand in these streets, on these corners, and these car traffic can't move, now you know the system is not gonna play that. They are going to send police at you. They might be on horses, they might be with they're beating you because you shut down the system. They're not gonna have that. But you are not following the rules of the system. You are following the rules of the unseen God. And you stand there. Why? Because you got the power of God behind you. What does that mean when you say you got the power of God? That means that you're able to do it. That means you're not scared. You're not scared of the police. You're not scared of the guns. You're not scared of the horses. You're not scared of the fire hoses. You're not afraid of the dogs. You got the Spirit of God that gives you the wherewithal to stand. And you're not afraid of death. And you stand. Now that'll bring some people around. They start thinking, a lot of folks. But now we have heard the conspiracy theorists say that the powers behind the curtain have a plan set up already called martial law. They'll throw martial law on you, and when you violate the martial law, they will herd you and put you in camps, retainment camps, something similar to the concentration camps that they had under Hitler in Germany. And everybody will start moving to the camps. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you this. I'm going to tell you this. If that happens, if you are being led by the Spirit of God and you are shutting this nation down to draw attention to the unseen God instead of that in God we trust, and they start hurting you, putting you in these camps, killing you perhaps, punishing you in most evil kind of ways. You know there has been a prophecy that said there would never be a flood again like the one we know of that's associated with Noah. But that the next time the earth will be, and when we say earth, we're talking about United States of America, state of Minnesota or Mississippi or any place, it will be done with fire. Now, as one who represents the unseen God does not promote violence. That's a God of love. So that God does not want to inflict pain on any one of us. Our sicknesses are brought on by us. Whenever we have to have something done, we have cancer, we bring that on ourselves. That God doesn't do that. That unseen God doesn't do that. We do that by virtue of association with the in God we trust, and that God behind the scene. That God does not want to hurt us. So we who are being led by that Spirit have no desire to cause violence to anyone. I don't want anybody to say that Eddie Marcus, spokesman and advocate of basic human rights for all people, ever advocated any violence against anyone. Whether you're white, black, old, young, I do not advocate violence because I know violence only begets violence. If we think the most evil people in the world, one of their greatest instruments is violence, why would a lover choose to exercise violence? Because once you do that, you're not a lover anymore. So you cannot. That's a principle of love. You cannot exercise violence. But you do have a right to be smart. And let me say this, and this is nothing trying to incite terrorists or anything of this sort, but it is a fact. If the status quo starts putting you in jail, separating your families, putting them where they want to put them, just to mess up your mind so they can still maintain control, they got guns, they got tanks, they got planes, they got bombs, they got what? Biological warfare, they got AIDS, they got whatever. All you have in your poverty is a match. A match, ladies and gentlemen. M-A-T-C-H. A match. You can strike that match. See, you don't own any buildings. You don't own any corporations. You don't own any of that. They do. And they love it. you burn that sucker down. Let me tell you, what happened in New Orleans when Katrina hit? It hit everybody. What happened when the tsunami hit in the various portions of the country, of the world, should I say? It brought everybody down. What happened in Japan? What happened in India? No white person, no black person, no Indian person. Nobody could walk away praising all they got. No, they were all out with a helping hand. So if the nation feels that you are nothing, that they can just kill you and do anything they want to you, that is as evil can be. But you got a match. And you can bring them down out there in the streets just like you, looking for a place to stay, looking for a house, looking for clothes to wear, looking for food to eat. And you know what they will do when everybody's looking for that? They will come together and try to work it out. Now, it'd be a sad statement that we have to resort to that, but it is an equalizer. So I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, poor people, the power to change this world is in your hand. Whether you are in America, Africa, Asia, anywhere humanity exists, the poor people have the power to change this world. They got everything to gain and nothing to lose. And all you need to do is to take your mind off of "In God We Trust" and look to the God that you cannot see except through all of creation, and believe that if that power can do all of that, that power can liberate you. And so you allow that power to come inside of you and liberate you first, because you want to, and you stand tall. And the story that they said about Meshach, and Abednego, they will be saying about you, because when they put you in that fire furnace, they will discover that you're not in there alone, but there's one there to keep you in comfort. There's one there to take away the sting of the flame. And you can be laughing and talking, planning your next strategy when they unlock the door. Now that might seem like far-fetched, but ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something. God is real. This money is fake. But God is real. Now I told you that. I hope you can get a sense out of it. I don't really want you to go crazy, but I want you to know that the key to life is in your hand, in the hands of the poor. Then I'm going to say this to you, poor people. Don't expect the middle class to come to your rescue until you stand up for yourself. You have to force it. Don't expect the rich to come to your rescue until you have forced the middle class to come to your rescue. Then together you will force the rich. And don't expect the church to come to your rescue until the middle class and the rich have come to your rescue. Then the church will be embarrassed. They'll come to your rescue. But until then, you are on your own. So you only have one power to turn to, and that's God. Now, I too have been to the mountaintop, and I have told you the secrets of the path to the mountaintop. I think I'll call this program that. Rather than come back home, I think I'll call it The Secrets of the Path to the Mountaintop. Let me write that down. Secrets of the Path to the Mountaintop. You know, that's a good one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I haven't wasted your time. I sure haven't wasted mine. I've gotten an opportunity to just put it together again. And so I'll say this is once again Eddie Marcus, spokesman and advocate for basic human rights for all people, where my motto is, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," which means the best life that you, the people, in these bodies, on this planet, at this time, could humanly enjoy, which translated into peace, prosperity, and joy, translated into unlimited, unrestricted education, health care, and careers of choice, translated into your dreams materializing right before your eyes because you put your hands and mind to cause it to happen. Until next time, bye-bye.